Welcome to The Current. I'm Clint. She's Sandra, and we're the Daltons. Coming at you live. So today we're going to talk about being free.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so freeing being free.
Right.
I wish the grocery prices were free.
Right.
But you know, it's just.
And if you want to, help us out with some tax freedom, just throwing it out there. You know what I'm saying?
So it's free. You know, we live our lives, and some people live their lives in regret because they just are not free. It's bondage.
Yeah.
It's.
And we're even talking about people of faith, babe.
Yeah.
There's so many people in God and in church that are not walking in the freedom of Jesus Christ. They're really not.
Yep. They're
walking in religion.
Yeah.
But they're not walking in the freedom of Jesus Christ.
Right. And, without the freedom, we get the freedom here in America. Is a great thing about America is we get to choose who we serve.
Yeah.
We serve God.
That's right.
We don't serve government.
That's right.
There's a lot of people out there like, India. There's a lot of, the communist countries. And they don't get a choice.
And so crazy. So many Christians and people, kingdom people, are so stuck on serving government that they took God out of the equation.
Yes.
And so they feel like they're in bondage to government. No, Jesus Christ is still on the throne. I don't care who's in office, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But we do like Trump. I'm just saying.
Babe. Oh my God. Babe.
I ain't supposed to do that. But, there's a plug. All right.
Beep, beep, beep.
All right. So Matthew 6:33. I love this. This is the NIV version. But seek ye first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well.
Yeah.
And that includes freedom.
Yeah.
Discouragement is so bonding. Life's hits, the loss of, like the loss of my dad kind of sent me in my spiral.
Yeah.
My spiral down. And I wasn't doing dark things, but I wasn't happy. I was depressed. I didn't care.
Sure.
Work suffered, family suffered, kids suffered.
Sure.
And my suffering,
Yeah.
But it was like really, really easy to fall into the abyss, so to be free, it took a lot, but I had to surrender the things that I knew were creating my character flaw and not allowing me to be free, and just get tired.
Yeah.
So why not seek the other side?
Yeah. And so one of the things that we're going to do today to talk to you all during this podcast about free is taking the word free, F-R-E-E, the acronym. And so the first point was first God. The sad part about the reason why we're not walking in true freedom, as he quoted the scripture in Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else shall be added. The reason why many Christians and non-Christians, believers and non-believers alike, are not experiencing true freedom is because they're looking outside of God for their freedom. They're looking for it in the approval of man. They're looking for it in the acceptance of man. They're looking for finding different sexual partners, and they're coming up short. They're coming up empty. They're coming up still in more bondage. People battling with depression. They're taking all these pills. Some people are drinking themselves to death, taking all these prescription medications. And of course, there's a place for all that. I'm not against that. But when it gets to the point that you're using prescription medication as an escape to depression and anxiety and all this other stuff, then are you truly seeking God? That's why we're not experiencing true freedom, and so we dance. And one day, babe, and I want to share this. One day I was in church, and it was during a worship service. And I've shared this before with my church in a sermon, but I was in church service, and I was in the front row as a pastor's wife, and we were in the middle of worship, and all of a sudden God shows me things through pictures, through visions, and all of a sudden, this is crazy. I literally saw Lazarus, and the reason why I knew it was Lazarus is because he was all wrapped up in
mummy cloth.
Yeah, mummy cloth. He was dancing, but he was like, he was like hopping, but he was still wrapped up in that mummy cloth. And I said, God, what is that? He said, that's a lot of people in church, in God, dancing, shouting, praising God, still in bondage to all of these things. They're not really free. I was like, oh my God. He said they're still wearing the grave clothes. They're still wearing that old nature. They're still holding on to the lies of the enemy. And so that's why they're not free. And so, yeah, that was crazy when he showed me that.
So the effing free is first God.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
God first.
Yes.
The thing we're going to go to next is R.
Yeah.
For release the weight and sin.
And the Bible even goes on to say that Hebrews 12:1, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race mark set out for us. But before we can even let go of the things that are holding us hostage in bondage, mindsets, attitudes, habits, character flaws, before we can even get to that, we have to first stop at 1 John. We have to make our first pit stop at 1 John 1:9. And it says we have to confess. There has to be a confession. If you're in denial that you struggle with anger, I used to be in denial. No, I'm serious. I used to look, oh my God, I'm just going to admit something. When my kids were little, and I was trying to get up and get ready for work, I was like yelling and screaming and hollering. And I mean, get up for school. You're going to be late. Da, 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 da. Yelling at them all the way to the front door of the school. And one day I was after I dropped them off, this had been going on for months. And I'm looking at them and they're all like traumatized. They're all sitting in the car, and in my mind, I'm like, well, if they would be ready, I wouldn't be yelling. If my husband would help me, I wouldn't be so angry. If they would have put their clothes together, I wouldn't be struggling with this anger issue. It's because of them. I have this anger issue. And I'm telling you, right when I'm going through all of these excuses, I'm in denial. I'm making excuses. I'm blaming everybody for the reason why I'm not free from this anger issue. Holy Spirit says, the reality is you struggle with anger. You're in denial and you're blaming and making excuses that you have a spirit of anger on you. And you need to confess it so that I can heal you from it, because whatever you won't face, you cannot get deliverance from.
Right. And I had to face the fact that I really didn't. I was angry with my mom. My mom she wasn't always a good mom, but she was a great mom, but there's those times where I felt that she wasn't.
Yeah.
And I held on to some bitterness and some anger. My dad died when I was really, really young. My biological father died when I was 11 months old. And I had a different last name. You kind of always wonder but nobody said.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything. It's kind of like the little puppy sitting in the corner. Everybody sees it, but they're not going to clean it up.
The elephant in the room that nobody acknowledges.
Right. And so I harbored that. And so the way I took my anger out on her was that I gave the school, any woman in school, man, I gave them a run for their money. I made them earn their money. I feel horrible for that now.
You was a bully.
No, I was just a heathen. I was bad.
Oh, he was a heathen. Okay.
I'm telling you, I was like,
I know that. Confessing it.
Yeah, I realized that, people can't give you what they ain't got.
Wow.
People can't give you what they ain't got.
That's freedom right there. Unrealistic expectations on people.
Yes, my mom was so not able. My mom, in her defense, she lost a husband.
Sure.
The father of her child.
Right.
She was young.
Yeah.
What was she gonna do?
Right.
Yeah.
So
I see her actions, and they weren't perfect, and maybe they were for her at that time.
Sure.
But I held on to the
unforgiveness,
hate, the unforgiveness, I'll show you,
the bitterness, the rebellion.
And so I did. I know my mom will tell you too. If she was alive today, she would tell you she cringed every time the phone rings because it was always a teacher calling what Clint do. What did Clint do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And but once I realized that people can't give you what they ain't got.
Wow.
It changed everything.
Wow. Yeah.
Because if I ask you for $1 million and you ain't got it,
right?
What am I gonna do? Get mad?
Exactly.
I mean, come on now.
Exactly.
If I asked you for food and you ain't got it, I'm supposed to be mad at you? No, what I need to do is turn around and help you get some food too.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good.
So
I love that analogy.
And people in church, they don't always got it, but there's a team like Kingdom Builders. And there's a team, there's leadership in your team that should be able to spot what you ain't got,
right,
and give it to you. Because a lot of times, some people just don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People really don't know how to get free.
Right. Yeah.
They're so stuck.
Yeah.
They're on that hamster wheel of life, and that thing's going at 90 miles an hour. How are you going to jump off? So it's a matter of stopping that hamster wheel. And knowing that you have to seek God first to really truly get off the hamster wheel.
Sure.
We can justify it with pills. We could do something else. We can seek the alcohol. We could seek this. We could see all the bad we could seek.
Right.
But it's a temporary problem.
A Band-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a temporary problem for a long-term view.
Yeah. And that's what I did. I was, from the age of 18 to 29, I was, a heroin addict. I was in my addiction of heroin, cocaine, and just whatever you put in front of me, I was going to do it. And I was in bondage for many years, but the real bondage was I would not confess that it was my fault. I wanted to blame again. I wanted to blame, being raised by a stepfather who was narcissistic and verbally abusive. I wanted to blame my mom for not protecting me. I wanted to blame the uncle who molested me. I wanted to blame all of these people. And so it kept me in bondage a lot longer because I would not exercise 1 John 1:9. I would not take ownership until one day I'm sitting in a prison cell. Now I'm only 20 years old at this time. Can you imagine being 20 years old in prison? Oh my God. I remember just waking up every day and you're supposed to be in college. You're supposed to be, this is the prime. This is the time you moved out of home and you're supposed to be living the dream, right? And so here I am, the time I should be in college. I'm in a prison cell from the age of 20 to 23. And I remember one particular time I was introduced to God and believe it or not, I was introduced to God in prison, in jail. And so through that relationship of building my relationship with God, this one particular time I was laying on the hard steel floor in this cell that I was in prison. And I was on the floor in a fetal position, Clint. And I was laying there and I was laying there in a fetal position and I was angry. I was angry at my mom. I was angry at my dad. I was angry at just different situations, relationships, just all different things. And I was and I was laying there and I heard God and I was oh, and I'm laying there in this victim pity party, woe is me attitude in a prison cell at 21. And I'm laying there on the floor and I heard God say, and I'm telling God, well, if it wasn't for my mom and she didn't do this, and if it wasn't for my dad and they didn't do this, and if my uncle wouldn't have done, then I wouldn't be in prison. And all of a sudden, God, once again, highlighted to me, if you continue down this path of playing the blame game, if you continue down this path of making excuses for you going out and self-medicating yourself with drugs and alcohol and toxic relationships, you're going to stay stuck. You're going to stay in this prison. You're going to end up having a life sentence. At the time, I only had a 3-year sentence. And I was like, he's like,
a lifetime.
Yeah, he's like, you're not a kid. You're not a kid. You're not a child. You know right from wrong. And so you're choose you this day whom you will serve. Choose it. God, I've set before you life and death. You get to choose. I was there in prison because I made choices. You know, I could have chose to get into counseling. I could have chose to go into drug and people reached out to me. My mom dragged me in detox centers, but I left them. She let me in one door and I went out the back door. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like help was being offered to me. I just rejected it, which landed me in prison. And so, again, you're not going to experience freedom until you're willing to lay aside the weight. But it first starts, marriages can't get healed unless there's a confession that you are the part of the problem. You can be part of the problem, but guess what? You can also be a part of the solution in that tumultuous marriage. Right? You can make a decision today. I'm going to choose to be a better spouse. I'm going to choose to do better by my spouse. I'm going to choose to treat my spouse with the mutual respect that he's been giving to me. Right? So any day you can wake up and choose, I'm going to choose something different. I'm going to choose to put the bottle down. I'm going to choose to put the pill down. I'm going to choose to put the syringe down. I'm going to choose to get away from these toxic people that are holding me backwards. I can choose. And starting the choosing is making a confession. I'm either part of the problem or I'm either part of the solution. So I choose to be my own, with Jesus Christ, my own rescue story.
Yeah. And you know, he rescued me. It was my last day of prison. You know, I got there because I was a violent idiot. You know what I mean? But I went to prison in my last
I can see you as violent, bro. Back in the day, I'm talking about. You're sweet as pie now.
I know, right? It's God. Because sometimes,
except when we're on the 210. Now, then
it comes out then. Let me get out and just show them real quick how they're supposed to act.
I think that's everybody on the freeway.
I think everybody every now and then needs to kind of act right for that. That's just me. But my last day of prison, I'll never forget. This is what my last day of prison. I refused to meet God in church. God didn't get me in it. I mean, in prison, God didn't get me in this situation. I'm not asking him to get me out. That's how prideful I was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't puke. I just did my thing.
Yeah.
And so when the last day came, you know, you're getting out on Monday. You've just done a 4-year stint. So you're like, oh, you know what? Let me just go. Let me do anything I could do to get out of this jail cell because it's closing. The walls are closing in and time won't tick.
Yeah.
You know, so I go and it's TD Jakes and he preaches a sermon on hurting people, the ones you're close to. But he says, every time you sin, you hang Jesus back up on that cross.
Wow.
And something touched me.
Wow.
Something touched me there that every time I hurt somebody, I'm not just hurting that person. I'm hanging Jesus back on the cross, putting the crown of thorns back in his head, hitting the nail every single time, and that painful hand, you know? And so I just started hearing that in my head over. And when I do something wrong, I'm serious. It'd be like, are you kidding me? Why we got to talk about this right now?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's what led me to stop.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't even know I was really that far gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
again, denial. Yeah. We can deceive our own selves.
Yeah. Everybody else, it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah, it's everybody else. Exactly.
They deserve it.
Yeah.
You know, nobody deserves to be mistreated.
Exactly.
And, nobody deserves to, you know, I don't really know what clicked, but that sentence right there, every single time you do what you know is wrong, you're putting it back on the cross.
Wow.
And every single time that I acted out was usually, I will show you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
surprise, they showed me, being real. It comes back to get you,
Sure.
So that release.
Release.
Whatever triggers you, you can decide, okay, I'm going to let this action trigger my response.
Reaction.
But I just I can't live there no more.
Exactly.
I don't want to.
Exactly.
Life's more fun this way.
Exactly. Isn't it?
My best friend.
So the first thing in free is first God. And the third letter in free is R, release. You got to confess and you got to make a choice to make a decision to walk away. And the E in free is embrace your story. I think one of the reasons why many people are not moving in true freedom is they're not embracing the whole totality of their story. It's okay. I don't care who you are. If you live on this earth long enough, you're going to have had people hurt you, people let you down. You've made bad choices. We've all, made bad choices in our lives, right? And so, but I love that, again, Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for good to them that love him, to them that are the called according to his purpose. I met a lady who was hiding her story. She was in a big, beautiful church in another state. And I was constantly going on social media, doing lives, telling my story, how I had overcome addiction in my early ages. And I was free. I was free to share my story. And people would always pull me to the side. I'm talking about other pastors, other fivefold ministries. How could you be so transparent and vulnerable, sharing your story? Aren't you afraid people are going to judge you? Aren't you afraid people are going to look down? Why? Do you know Jesus, the cross of Christ? No, I'm not going to worry. That's part of my story. I'm going to embrace it. Why? Because not only am I embracing my story for his glory, but it may be something in the audience. You know how many people have come to me when I've preached my authentic story and included my authentic story in my sermon, that women have come to the altar and said, could you please pray for me? I have a daughter that's on meth. I had a son that OD'd on fentanyl. Thank you for telling me your story. I wish my son, and they come up and they ask for prayer. So a lot of times why would you let people's opinions hold you back? And so this one lady, she was like, just you telling your story authentically on live Facebook and just when you preach your messages, like I want that type of freedom. I don't want to be judged in my church. Why would you? If you have people in your church that judge you because you've made some mistakes along the way, you have not done everything perfectly, they don't know Jesus. That's what the cross of Christ is for. You know what I'm saying? It's embracing your story so you can walk in freedom and tell it. I'm going to tell it wherever I go. I don't care what platform, what stage, whether it's on social media, whether it's at an auditorium of 20,000. Guess what? I'm going to tell my story. I have the freedom in Jesus Christ to tell my story so that Jesus can be glorified. His story, my story is his glory.
And I used to be one of those. I ain't talking. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to tell my story. I'm just going to be cool, be calm and collected, right? But Jesus.
But why do we do that?
I guess because they're afraid of judgment. The people around you. Oh, I'm not talking to him no more. I'm not talking to that. I don't want to do that.
Sure.
And didn't think I was worthy. Like, who's going to listen to me anyway? Right?
Yeah. Sure.
So, but I heard a sermon. It goes back to hearing what God say.
Yeah.
But I heard a sermon, and I didn't know there was a book on it too, but there is a book. It is called "If You Want to Walk on Water, You Got to Get Off the Boat." And if you want to really free yourself,
sure,
and let God heal you, you have to confess. You have to talk to Him.
Yeah.
I'm a little calmer now, but that camera scares the crap out of me. I'm just saying, I get nervous, I get shaky. I got 50 things to say when I'm riding in the car.
Yeah.
When I get to the camera, which I used to couldn't talk to people.
Right.
My job got me into that.
Yeah.
And they put
brought
me
you out
on.
of
They
that.
put me on stage, and I went. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Okay, now you're doing that all over. You're doing it all the time."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so when you get put in situations, he wants to know, like, how can you even, as a father,
Yeah.
as a pastor, as a business owner,
Yeah.
as just even a friend, a husband, a dad, whatever, these things, if you can't live your story, how do you expect them to live theirs? You know what I mean? And it's his. Everything on this earth is God's.
Yeah.
And there ain't nobody on this earth that's never committed sin, never done something stupid,
Right.
never done something. And child, if you are worried about what I did 30 years ago,
Yeah. Right.
maybe we need to go open your closet and we'll talk. But if it doesn't bother me and I've outlived, and my God has forgiven my sins,
Right.
my God forgave me.
That's right.
I could care less if you do.
That's right.
And I don't care how that offends somebody.
Yeah.
And they always say, Clint, you're bold. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know what I stand on.
Sure.
My foundation is built on Christ. My relationship is built on Christ.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be free.
Exactly.
With God.
That's right. And then on top of that, again, you don't know by you feeling those holy nudges as God opens opportunities to share your story with people. You just don't know who you're helping.
Yeah,
you don't know who you are a breath of fresh air to. You don't know who you're giving somebody hope to, inspiring them that, hey, if you've gone through that and you're on the other side of it, my God, there's hope for me. I know when I used to hear stories of people who had overcome addiction through Jesus Christ and experienced freedom, it gave me hope. People who had overcome childhood traumas and overcome depression, who had overcome insecurities and inadequacies and fears, as they began to be transparent and vulnerable of sharing their story, it gave me hope. It gave me like, wow, you mean you can be that powerful, you can have that platform, and you could struggle with those things and still be used of God. Oh my God, there's hope for me. That's how I used to always feel. So I follow people who are transparent and vulnerable. They give me hope. Because, we all got things that we're struggling with. So to hear somebody be vulnerable and transparent about their story, it gives me another level of freedom too, to share my story.
Exactly. And how many, and what breaks my heart is there's so many pastors out there. There's so many religions out there that you sit and you listen to that pastor, and that's the way it goes, and that's how it is, and they without letting you experience your storytelling, it's all one-sided. So what's it for? What's it for?
Yeah.
God created all of us. And he didn't create us all the same.
Sure.
If he would have created us all the same to go through all the circumstances, to all the things, we couldn't have the freedom of choice. We couldn't have the freedom, we couldn't have the knowledge. And what you go through, I never have to experience. But what you go through, I never have to experience.
Sure.
But what if we did? Right. What if we had to experience that? So us, one track minded, you know what I mean?
And you know what I love so much is like when I go to the county jails. When I first go, as I go to the Linwood County jails once a month. And as soon as I walk into the pod, there's about 30 to 40, 50 women, inmates, when I walk into that dorm. And when I first walk in, they all look at me like they roll their eyes. What do you have to say? You're coming in from the outside. What could you possibly have to say? And as soon as I start to share my story, they immediately, some people are on the phone, they hang up. Some people are they come out of their dorm and they just surround. So as we head for a close, the F in free is first God. The R in E is release. The E in free is
extravagant grace.
Yeah, extravagant.
And to elevate.
Yes, extravagant grace. So the most important piece to this whole puzzle of true freedom is accepting the extravagant grace of God that we do not have to earn and work to experience true freedom, that Jesus already did the work on the cross at Calvary. Mm-hmm. The Bible says in Ephesians that his grace is sufficient for us in times when we are weak. It even goes on to say about grace. Can you quote the verse, what it says?
Yeah, Ephesians 2:8-9. For it is grace that we've been saved through faith. Mm-hmm. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God. Mm-hmm. Not by works, so that no one can boast. I didn't do it alone.
Come on.
I didn't do it alone.
There it is there.
You know, I did it with God.
Yeah.
And loving people around me.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm striving for. I'm going to love the people around me.
Sure. So as we head for a close, free, remember these four things to walk in the freedom of Jesus Christ. Number one, first God. The R is release whatever you're holding on to so you can experience freedom. E is embrace your story. Stop letting the enemy torment you and the critics of others torment you by not their judgment of you. And E, walk in the extravagant grace of God, because it's through his grace you can experience freedom. That's what he went to the cross for. So do you want to?
And this, get intimate with God, man. I'm talking to you personally right now. You know, get intimate with God, get intimate with your wives, get in your family, and tune into the video for Conversations for Men by Men. No time out.
Exactly. Oh, yes. No time out. I love that. And also, if you want to know how to get involved, I run a transitional housing for single women and women with children and men. If you want to know how to get involved, please stay to the end, watch the video. There'll be some information for you on how you can make a difference and how you can get involved.
And we'll see you next time on The Current.
On The Current.
Thank you for watching Kingdom First TV.